let's get started. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I know just a little bit about your. We've worked on a similar contract, but I've never had a chance to really explore what is your business and your history and your journey to date. So I'm excited to be able to have that conversation. I don't normally do a real bio or introduction to who you are. I know that that's going to come out, and we're going to explore the timeline and different things that you've gone through. But to get started, I'd like to ask you just simply, how would you introduce what you do today? What is your business today?
So I'm the CEO of NxCareer, and at my firm, what we do is we help individuals that are just not feeling fulfilled in their career. We help them figure out what to do next. So we're helping them find the next step in terms of their career. So we've been working with adults, midlife crisis, and also teenagers that really are looking for guidance when it comes to choosing the first career or their first step. So often what we do, like we help the parent and the student. And on the other hand, with COVID, it did change a lot of things for our company. So we've been helping employers find the right match in terms of employees. So now we really see both sides of the story. So that's what I do full time. I've been doing it for 5 years now, only 3 years part-time though. And it's been quite a journey.
So I'm curious, the question I like to ask is, when did you first think of yourself as an entrepreneur? And if that's not when you started your business, I'd love to understand, how that all happened.
Oh, I love that question because so I really don't come from a background where, like, my father was a parole officer, my mother was a teacher's assistant. I had an aunt and an uncle that were in business, but that was about it. So when I started my business, it was mostly because I saw a need in my community. I was not feeling fulfilled in my career, and my colleagues, their kids didn't know what to do with their lives. So I kind of started seeing them during the weekend, go at their homes, which I should have not done, but that's the way you start. So when I started, it was kind of not by mistake, but just to help people around me. Then I thought, well, let's do it a little bit more professional. So let's have a website and a more like a specific process. So those were the 2 first years. I had a business name, a website, that was it. I still had my full-time job. So I wouldn't say that I felt like an entrepreneur. When I decided to take that leap of faith and becoming an entrepreneur full-time, still that year, the imposter syndrome was so real. I was still figuring out what to do. The confidence level was not high. I would say in the last 2 years, going through COVID, I had just hired 2 people to join my business. So I was going from a solopreneur to a team of 3, including me. And then COVID hit us. The way I manage these changes, I would say that helped me grow my confidence level as an entrepreneur. And probably within the last year, I do see myself as an entrepreneur, but it took a while.
So let's go back to some of those keywords. I love to hear more about what the leap was. People say I took the leap. So if a leap for you, I assume that you gave your notice and you quit your full-time job and you took your side hustle or part-time company and it was your total income. I'm wondering if you don't mind sharing, how big of a leap was that? Like, had you built it up to a part where, there was low risk, or what kind of risk was that? People use the word leap, but they don't always understand how big of a deal that was.
Yeah. I'm going to give you the honest answer that I haven't been sharing to a whole lot of people. It's probably the second time that I do on a podcast, and I've done like 7. But the real story is that my father was diagnosed with cancer like 3 months before I took that leap. And the treatments were in Quebec. So my mother was there, And I was seeing that she was having a hard time, and my contract was coming to an end with my full-time employer. So I just said, you know what, don't renew my contract. I have my business on the side. I had like 2 clients at that time, like per week. So far from being a full-time job. But I felt like my family needed me, and I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna go through to Quebec. I can still help my clients virtually. I'm gonna try to grow, but that was not my main focus. Unfortunately, a week before my contract ended, my father passed away. I say unfortunately, but it's crazy how when hardship happens in your life, you have 2 choices. It's either you kind of stay in that mindset where you lost something. And for me, my father was my mentor. I was his #1 fan. But the values that he gave to me and that work ethic, it all comes from him. So that was kind of the fuel to the fire, where I was like, you know what, I don't have a full-time job anymore, and I want to continue my father's legacy. It was not as clear at that time, but unconsciously, I think that's what fueled my fire, and I didn't have a choice. So when my old employer said, Sylvie, if you want to come back, you have your job. Like, I know your plans have changed. You don't have to go to Quebec. But I said, I didn't have that sense of fear. I just had no emotion at that time because of everything that I was going through. But that was the perfect storm for me to be able to take that leap. If it wasn't from all of that, I don't know if I would have had the confidence to take the leap. So it's unfortunate, but like, life happens, and now I'm able to grow and continue that legacy of helping people in my community, which my father did for 36 years in his own way. So I'm very grateful for that. So yeah, that was the way I took the leap.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that. I think it's really valuable to hear the different motivations and reasons that people do their own thing, and it's very often not because I want to make lots of money. And entrepreneurship is something different, and it's now becoming a little bit overused and taken for granted, but there was always the saying of don't waste a good crisis. And now, COVID, everybody does it, but when things are really, the chaos is all over the place, and anything can happen, and no matter which way you go, there'll be change. I would make sure that you understand that changing for what you did is like, there was other ways you could have taken that would have been easier. Mm-hmm. So it's great to see that you moved on and looked, to the helping others and the legacy versus the other paths you could have taken.
And I mean, anything that you have to go through, for the people who are listening right now, whenever you go through something, I know for me it worked well, where like even COVID, like my business crashed. Everyone that I was following and guiding at that time, they all canceled their processes because they were like, well, I don't even know if I'm going to have a job tomorrow. So it's not the time to focus on loving my job. That's the worst of my worries right now. Even the students, they weren't ready. So I had like 2 nights of not sleeping and trying to figure out what to do, and listening to podcasts and webinars for free. And I was able to and at one point, I'll be honest, I was like, why am I not working for the government again? But I knew, again, the first crisis, I was like, you know what, this is your why. And why did you start your business was to have a greater impact, an impact that you couldn't have as an employee. So that's the fuel. Now you're in a crisis. How can you make sure you survive and that you can keep your 2 employees? So I went to my network, and I got out of nowhere new contracts, and the revenue of the business doubled last year. So we were able to grow and thrive in this COVID, just because there was another perfect storm. And everything that happens, you have 2 choices. Either you stay in the status quo, or you move forward and you take that fuel and you grow with that.
Yeah, the knowing or having a why or purpose, I think it's come up again and again, but it's so important. I don't know if my team, who are all here today, I don't know if they realize that, because we made the decision to pivot our own business and we were going to change, and we had a large RFP that we were pretty confident we were going to win. And it was supposed to be decided the last of March 2020. And they just said, we're not going to consider an RFP this year. And then the world shut down. And I was like, I had no idea. So I took 2 whole weeks where I didn't do anything. It's for the first time in a long time. I played video games. And then some of the people I had been working with needed help. Like they needed somebody to help with communications and getting people together and figuring out the crisis and the funding. And so suddenly it was my why brought me back in. So I don't think if it was just about dollars and cents, it would have brought me back in. But there was a why that made it clear. It's like I don't know all the rhymes and reasons, but I definitely have things I need to go do.
Yeah.
So for sure. So that's great. There's all kinds of places. Like now I'm completely off on a tangent, but I really like where the conversation's gone so far. The other thing I wanted to double click on was your mention of imposter syndrome, because I know a lot of people who go through that. I don't know if I know anybody who hasn't gone through it, to be honest. But I know from my own experience and family members that is, or I guess my understanding is that is more likely and common within female leaders than with us men who are just silly enough to do, even if we're unqualified. We seem to have more comfortable saying so. How was that for you? And looking back, hindsight, is there anything you could have told yourself when you were at the worst or the most challenging part of imposter syndrome? Is there anything you could have told yourself to get you through that faster, or anybody, or anything you would have suggested you could have done?
Go get a coach, man. Go get some help. Invest in yourself. I tried to do it on my own for too long, until I got my first mentor. I probably procrastinated with my website for 6 months, just because I wasn't sure what color my branding should be. And when my mentor reached out and said, hey, Sylvie, have you started seeing clients? Where are you at with your website? I was like, well, I'm still unsure about my branding. In cap letter, he wrote down, go get a first client, like a paying client, because I was doing it. I had done it for free for my colleagues and all, but he just said, so I needed someone to believe in what I could offer, because I was not believing that my offer was special. So having people that supports you, often, crazy enough, it's not your family, it's not your best friends, it's not the people close to you. It's someone else that sees your light. And if, I know for me, my 2 mentors, Pierre and Ray, were like pivoting parts of me really taking that leap, like the first leap of starting my business, not the leap of doing it full time. But it's just because they believe in me. So having a mentor, and also if you can, but even if you can't, go get a coach. Like when you invest, you don't have a choice. Last year, the reason why I hired 2 people is because I had a coach, and that was the goal. And when I said that, it didn't make sense. I was not at a place in my business where I could hire two people, but another person that I had coffee with my networking strategy said, Sylvie, you have great ideas, but you can't do what you want to do unless you have 2 other like you working for you. So that's why I came up with, okay, I need 2 other people working with me to be able to create a program for high school students. So when I got my coach, it didn't make sense. After 2 months, I was able to hire those 2 people. So having people around you will have an impact on that imposter syndrome.
So I'd love to explore you say it so simply, but the shifting from solopreneur to a team of 3. So I'd love to explore some of the actual tactical things because you're a hiring, recruitment, networking, like you understand that space. Was there any stiff learning curve of you hiring your first people? So maybe just stop there. Like tactically, how was that for you to hire your own people through your own processes when you're the expert in those things?
So I was quite blessed in the way that it happened. When I recruit or when I help a company recruit the right people, I always tell them how when you can use the secret job market. So when you can have someone refer to you and someone within your company can say, I know this guy, I know this girl, she's amazing, she's a unicorn, you want her on your team. That's the right way to do it. For me, the way it went is that I was actually in a career counseling process with someone that has a master's degree in career counseling. And after 35 minutes in the session, I said, and she knows we're okay with confidentiality purposes, but I said, Anik, can we just stop this session right now? I've never done this, and I know it's really not professional, but can we just stop here? And she was like, what are you doing? And I explained to her, like, everything you're mentioning that you're looking for in a job, that's what I do. I've been trying to expand. I don't know how it can look like. I don't know how we can do this. I don't even know if I have the means to do it, but I want to find a way if we can work together. I was blessed because Anik, she's an entrepreneur. So she has another business, and she had that full-time position that was taking too much of her time. So she talked to her husband. I said, it was the Christmas break. So I said, just think about it. Figure out, is there a way? I'll think about it on my end, and let's regroup in January, which we did. And we just said, you know what, let's do it. She is a consultant. So she kind of has her own franchise of NxCareer in Bathurst up north. Okay. And so she's not on the payroll. If it would have been the case, it would have been too scary to do so. So yeah, that's why, again, like a perfect storm where I had the right person in front of me, not the financial means to hire her, but she was in a position where she didn't need a full-time position. So that was easy for a first hire. Now the second hire, it was for a like to be on a payroll. That was a little scarier. But I got like help from a program called Venture Canada, which helped me again lower the risk. And once I saw what she was bringing to the table as a student, I actually offered her a full-time position just last week. She's starting 1st May as an adult, her first first job, not as a student. But it's because I know what she's capable of. And I thought her, so I think just to go back to your question was, again, lowering the risk and finding the right people. So I never had a job posted once and it failed as I was looking for an assistant, didn't work out. But when I saw the right 2 people, I offered positions. So.
Yeah, I do like that, because we're using words that some people assign concrete meaning to, like hiring or team. But you technically didn't hire. I mean, you found the team and support to grow your business without necessarily traditionally hiring for your first role. Or, even the student positions on those programs, there's all kinds of different alternatives for you to grow the team and structure outside of the traditional, hiring and post for sure. And the hidden job market is huge. I talk to people about that all the time, but finding the unicorn is real. That's a real challenge. So,
and I mean, right now, I'm looking again to expand, and where the startup position of my business, we're done with that. It's been 5 years. We know what we're doing. We're confident in the results that we're getting with our clients. I'm now looking to expand and scale. And for that, I need a programmer but right now I fear, because it's like every time that I brought someone in was because it was the right person at the right time. And I said, can we figure this out? This time I do need to hire. So I'm still waiting, because I'm trying to, will I hear someone that would be a good fit? How can I go? Should I hire a student or someone with 5 years of experience? So I'm figuring all of that out. But it's part of being an entrepreneur. Yeah.
We're very much right in the middle there now. Like, we have delayed hiring, looking for the perfect fit. But it's delayed sales. It's delayed us ability to take on more work. So it's a weird place to be, in a place where everybody says they can't find a job, and your biggest trouble is finding the right people. So
Yeah,
Uh, so you have a lot of experience in this. Like you have, just looking at your LinkedIn, you have all kinds of past experience and history. So it makes sense that you became, this became your business. I was looking at your LinkedIn and you were in human resources and consulting and helping people with their careers. And then you went in a completely different direction and worked with the rentalsman prior to starting I assume that was your job when you started this business. And I'm curious whether there was any reason that you moved away from what you had been so close to, for that deviation.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. Really, it's just because most of the jobs that I got was from the secret job market. So every time that I worked, it was through a contract. So a maternity leave, so I was replacing someone, or I was filling a hole for a year or two. While I was working at the university, it was a maternity leave, and my boss was really impressed with the work that I did. And he was kind of sad that he couldn't keep me on his team. So he introduced me to one of his friends that was a rentalsman. And at that time, I was not bilingual at all. So first language is French. You can still hear that French accent. But I was not able to talk as I'm talking right now. Surprisingly, or fortunately enough for me, the guy was first language French, and he saw something in me. I don't know why. And he hired me to become a rentalsman without being fully bilingual, which 70% of my work was in English. It was quite a challenge. It's really through my network, being introduced to that position. They said I had the skills. I didn't know what to expect. And again, like, it's crazy how I was so productive in that type of work. And I kind of became an enemy to all of my other colleagues because I was doing too much. Like, my metrics were too high compared to the others. So that's where I knew, like, I can't work for the government. It's not going to work. I wanted to have a greater impact, but that's kind of how I fell into that position, which made me really unhappy and unfulfilled. I did drink a lot of wine at that time in my life. Now, when I look back, I needed to be in that type of position to start my business because I was trying to fill the hole that I had in my current job. And I wanted to get back to career counseling. So that's how I started seeing my colleagues' kids.
We had a speaker a little while ago, Steve Foran, and he talked about one of the biggest dangers is if you have a job you only like, but you like it. And I think of it as, like, I had one time where I actually took a job between closing a company and starting a new one. And there was things I just fundamentally didn't like about the impact I could have and the creativity I could explore. And I now think to him, and I think it's the same for you, how things would have been differently if I found something that I could tolerate and like, but maybe it didn't give me the impact. So I'm actually glad that I had a challenge with some of those job experiences.
Same for me, likewise. And I mean, that's how I was able to become fluently bilingual. If it wasn't through that job, all of the other job that I had was with the University of Moncton, the CCNB, but campus in the Francophone campus. So I was never able to practice my English. Now I'm able to be hired for speaking engagement in both languages, offer my services in both languages. So I'm very grateful for that job that I hated.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to put in perspective to hear that if you're really in a job you're not enjoying, that it's the right step for the future. So you're an expert in networking. That's come up. It's easy to see on your LinkedIn. I'd love to explore what you think is networking now in COVID, or like what you think entrepreneurs should be doing for, because this is us talking as the choir. I'm asking this question to share with other people because I'm as geeky into networking and building my network as a resource. But maybe, what do you think of as network? When people say networking or building my network, what's that mean for you? Let's start there.
So that's the thing. When we think about networking pre-COVID, it's all about going to events and exchanging business cards. That's an issue because when you're only exchanging cards, that's the first step of networking. It's creating a new contact, like creating a new connection. In my opinion, when you talk about networking, there's 3 steps in the process. Creating that first connection, it can be through an exchange of a business card, through being introduced via an email, through a third party. However you want to do it, that's the first step. Then you have to entertain that relationship. So you have to create moments where you can connect and bond with that person. And then through that connection, you're able to meet new people. So in French, I always say créer, élargir et entretenir. So create, entertain, and expand your network. When you're doing the 3 things, that's what you call networking. Now, I kind of find a strategy that works really well with me. I'm using 2 tools that really helps me, and I kind of create a habit just like brushing my teeth. So every week I have one networking time slot in my calendar. I call it in French again, the carré jaune, but the yellow square, because in my Outlook, it's all color coordinated. Right now we're in red, so that's a top talking event. In green are my clients. In orange is when I do sports. In purple is my meeting with my team. And in yellow is the time that I have to meet someone. So every week I should have one. Every month I should have 4. So for me, I saw that like with COVID, networking was a little bit more superficial because there was more events where you could create connection, but less time to bond and go to the next step. Now with COVID, you need to have one-on-one. So every week having that moment time slot in my calendar where either someone reached out on LinkedIn and asked me for a Zoom call, or I reached out if I saw that I don't have a yellow square in my Outlook, and I've been able to expand my network like crazy. And because of that, that's how I got 2 amazing contracts last year, and that saved me from COVID. So it's really just making sure that every week I have one event, meeting with one person where we're really bonding. And then with that meeting, there's an action. So either I do follow up, I give back, I'm going to send resources, I'm going to introduce that person to someone else. And the magical part of networking, when you're focusing on giving more, it always comes back. So every time that I meet with someone, I'm like, how can I help you? Do you have a problem to solve? If I can connect that person to someone else, or I can send a link to resources, I do it. So I'm focusing on the other person. And I mean, it's been coming back to me every time.
So I think I knew this already, but we're really well aligned in our beliefs about networking. The way I describe it often is, for me, it's building the relationships that help me with the problems I don't have yet. So it's a long-term looking at, I know that there's things I'm not going to know and the things I'm going to need that I don't know I need. So I'm building relationships paired with the idea for me, and I know that I've got this from a speaker or a book, and I'm stealing it and I can't remember to give the attribution, but is the relationship bank of I believe that every interaction with another person, virtually or in person, is either a withdrawal or deposit in the account of the relationship between us. And so my job, or the way I think about it, is literally in all my interactions is putting in the deposit so that I can withdraw when I need it. And I think we're really well. What's that?
It makes sense. I love how you just described it.
And I stole it, so we'll find out who did that. But I believe it wholeheartedly, and it gives me a viewpoint on networking and relationship building. But I have a frustration in networking, in working with others, especially as somebody who preaches along networking and building a network, is that I know a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, and government executives who don't. And I get a lot of people who are like, well, that's a lot of time. It's not necessary. No, it's like, no. Or it's just social media. And I was wondering if you have any tried and true ways that you've converted naysayers to networking, especially as business owners or entrepreneurs, or are you just concentrating on the people who are aligned?
Well, I mean, no, because I recommend networking to all of my clients, and I always tell them you should have started last year, 2 or 3 years ago. Now you need your network, and you don't have one. So that's why it needs to become a habit, a proactive strategy that you use on a weekly basis, so that whenever you need someone, you, just like you mentioned, you have people that can help you.
Yeah.
So the first time that you do it, I always tell them, just try to focus on the other person, learn from them, learn from what inspired them to become what they do, or why they started their business, and focus on the other people. And that's it. That's creating connections, but it's gonna come back.
Yeah.
I know a lot of my clients, mostly introverted, are like, Sylvia, I can reach out to someone I don't know. And I remember the first time that I did like a real network like event where I had coffee with someone at Starbucks. I was so anxious and stressed out because I didn't know what to expect. But when it becomes part of what you do every week, it just becomes a natural habit, and it's not as stressful to meet with people. So yeah, I think for me, when I explain it, it's just giving them examples of how it's been helpful in my life. And at the end of the day, they can decide, they can choose either if they want to use it or not. If they don't, I mean, that's their loss. But I don't force it on anyone.
You can only lead a horse to water.
Yeah.
I guess I always think of the evils or the negatives or the awkwardness that people think about as networking are often because they're only looking at short-term goals or reasons. So the top two short-term reasons to network is I need a job or I need to make a sale. And nobody likes that kind of networking meeting when your intention is to make a sale or to get a job right away.
Well,
but if you think about this as a longer term, it changes the whole perspective.
Mm-hmm. It's creating connection. That's it. When you focus on that, and that's why you should network before you need that job. We're talking about blocks of 5, where most adults will change career every 5 years. First year, you're just figuring out what you're doing. Second year, you're like feeling more confident in your new role. Third year, you're making changes. Fourth year, you're seeing the results of your changes. Fifth year, you're ready for something else. If you're waiting for that 5th year to network, you're not gonna get great opportunities. And again, you might not feel fulfilled in your new position because you're gonna look, job posting, oh, there's a job, I'm trying to fill that hole. It's the plaster effect. If along those 5 years, you're networking, whenever you're ready for a new role, you'll have job opportunities coming your way. They'll be knocking on your doors. And I've seen it so many times, it works. But during those 5 years, just focus on the others. It's gonna come back.
Yeah. So I'll stop preaching to the choir because I can get razz. We could talk about this forever. There's a couple questions I like to ask everybody. One of them is, thinking back since you charted your own path, you've been in your business for up to 5 years, what has been the single most exciting part of it to date? If something comes to mind that's been like, this is really exciting, I can't believe I just did that.
Well, growing, I know it's probably a typical answer, but just growing the business and like hiring, just seeing that growth and meeting our goals, that's really exciting. But other than that, if I talk about something more tangible, in 2019, I got hired for a speaking engagement to talk to a bunch of franchisee of a specific company. And it was in Montreal. So for me to go there and talk to all the franchise and say, this is how you should recruit your people, very, very great opportunity. It was stressful because was still really real at that time.
Yeah.
But that's where I saw, you know what, the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
So that was in 2019. 2020, I had so many goals of speaking engagements. And I got from I got for like 3 different conferences all across the country, which were all canceled. But yeah, no, that was big for my growth.
Yeah.
Definitely.
No, that's very, very validating. I do some public speaking, and it's just like having that much impact on that many people at once is really powerful.
Yeah.
So the complementary question to that, though, is I love to know what excites you and what's been the most exciting, because it's usually less about dollars and cents and I made lots of money. There's other like moments of presence and gratitude, which I love hearing about. But I also understand that no business owner has it all together, and we all make silly mistakes. And that often some people, they don't consciously do it, but I find a lot of people ascribe a expertise or confidence to entrepreneurs that isn't real, that prevents real, honest communication. So the question I'd like to ask is if there was in the last 5 years something that is just a cringeworthy, I can't believe I did that. That seems like a silly mistake. I don't want to tell anyone. Is there anything comes to mind that you can share that you wish 3 and 5 years ago that somebody else had shared those simple mistakes with you?
No. Well, while you were asking your question, I was thinking of something that I'm living right now where I'm like, yeah, I still don't know what I'm doing. But a mistake, like that's the thing. I never see mistakes. It's all experience. So, and I screwed for sure more than once.
So maybe some examples of those experiences that were learning experiences.
Well, not preparing enough for a speaking engagement, maybe. That happened only once. So like I was ready, and I was not speaking to the choir. So they came back and were really going with what I was saying, and not being prepared enough. I do feel like I haven't given my 100%, and I promised myself that after that, I mean, companies are paying for my services. Make sure that you're engaged, you are fully present, and that time I wasn't.
So I'm curious about whether that was because I've had that challenge and I've seen others with that challenge. Do you think that was a lack of preparation on your part for what you wanted to say, or a lack of preparation on understanding who they are in the audience and where they're going to hear it from?
Oh, the second one. I ask enough questions.
Yeah. I think that's where I like learning more about the audience has been my most hard-won lesson in communications. It's for sure. I'm glad that came out of that quick little discussion, because that is a huge communication learning that I don't know if you can learn in school. I think that's something you have to learn the hard way at least once.
Yeah, and I mean, you can prepare your text if it's like either a conference, a webinar, or a workshop, or like what is a discours in English? A
discussion? No,
not discussion, but like a talk, but like more professionally. I'm looking for my words.
Seminar?
No, like when you're talking to an event, everyone's sitting down and like you're doing a speech. A speech.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Speech is like you're preparing your text, you know every word, but it's kind of too prepared. But again, if you don't know who your audience is, they're gonna ask you a question and you're not gonna know what to answer. So definitely, I totally agree with what you just said. That's very important.
So I'm going to try to tie in. We've got a few really great questions from the people in the room. One of them that I love to hear people's strategies on this, because some people you might have just lucked out, but I'm wondering if there's any transferable skills on how you found or how you might suggest you find the right coach or mentor.
Well, you have to have confidence in whoever you hire. So for me, I never hired someone I didn't know. It was through there was one through Instagram. I have been following her for quite some times, and she's actually the one who reached out, but I had been following her for like a year. Loved the first conversation. It was not a sales pitch. She was not trying to sell what she does, and I hired her.
So it's amazing how effective longer term relationship building is at sales.
And you're before you buy a service, you're buying the person's, like, what they do, and it all goes to like personal branding and all of that. So you have to be consistent when you're a coach. But yeah, that person, I just loved how she was. She was really authentic. She loved her strategy were quite actionable. So it was more rational, less emotional, more my type. And we got along really, really well. And it really helped me grow my business in 2020. So, yeah.
So follow-up question, or not follow-up, slightly different question, but still from the audience. How do you, as part of your company, match employers with the right people? Do you focus on potential, value alignment, experience, and what tools do you use to figure that out?
All of the above. Well, it really depends on the company. So what we're trying, and that's the thing, we're not a recruitment agency. So we don't poke people on LinkedIn and say, hey, we're representing a company. We can do it, but it's the exception. Usually we are a consulting agency. So we really focus on, so let's say the last company that we were working with in the construction field, we told them, okay, so here's what you're looking for. We find a strategy that was working well for them. So for them was using their own guys. So they were working in trades. Ask your people to talk to people that they know, maybe guys that they studied with, maybe someone that they worked with in the past. And they could refer you to someone else. And if it works, they stay for 3 months, they're a good fit, then there's a referral bonus. So that worked well for them. So the strategy when it comes to hiring, we really go with what type of business it is and what would work well with them. When it comes to choosing the right person, if it's more of an executive position, we do psychometric assessments just to make sure that it's a good fit, the personality will work. We know a little bit more about like their soft skills, what they're good at, what they could be working on, their natural traits. So that's one part of the information. And we kind of do an informal interview, not focusing really on what they would be doing on the job. So like we're not assessing the technical skills, but more about like what are you looking in the right company? When it comes to your professional development, where do you see yourself in 5 years, but not in the interview type of way. Seriously, like how do you want to grow professionally?
So you're exploring their why. I like how that always comes back centrally, both for the company and for the person. It's like if we can align on the why, then everything will likely be more successful.
And the crazy part is I remember one company that we worked with, they wanted to hire a guy and we did all of that process. And at the end I said, you know what, this guy is perfect for this job, but I can tell you, if you don't keep him motivated, he's gonna leave in less than a year. He's really like goal oriented. He needs to work in a fast-paced environment, which they were. But once he was able to solve all of their problems, he would get like bored. They still decided to go with him. He left after 8 months. So it's crazy how we're able to really see what could happen, and then the company can decide wherever, if ever they want to proceed or not.
So, like, there's a lot of different types of models in consulting agencies, and especially in recruitment. And my understanding, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is that you've talked about working with companies and their strategy around hiring. Do you also work with individuals? You know, you mentioned earlier on you were working with young people in middle age and about finding the next career. How does that split for you, and how have you decided? Like, do you have a decision around who are your clients and what is your business model? Or are you still exploring?
Individual. And the only reason why we're doing recruitment, and I hate calling it recruitment because it's not, the only reason why we work with companies is because we know what people are looking for. So it's still for the individuals. This is our buyer persona, our avatar of a client is that midlife, like in their 40s client who is a player that wants to feel fulfilled, and that person wants to be an asset for a company. So whenever we're working with a company, we're trying to find a player, find out that that job exists and is available. So that's why it's not recruitment, because if we were, say, a recruitment agency, we would just be trying to fill a hole for a company, and then we would get a referral, like 14% of the salary of that person. That's not how we do business, because our main goal is to make sure that individuals are feeling fulfilled. So if it's not a good fit for that person, we're not gonna fill that position.
Well, that's great. I don't think I fully realized that that was the core business. So one more audience question that actually follows up really nicely on that. How does your approach differ when dealing with the younger and the older clients? How would you say that their struggles differ?
It's two different problems. Definitely the older people, biggest challenge, they're often set in their ways and they're used to just applying online. And when I talk about networking, they're like, what? And I have to convince them that, you know what, you might get discriminated because of your age. So yes, we can tailor your resume and make sure that we're kind of not showing your age in a certain way. But at the end of the day, you have to show organization that you're interested in what you're able to do, and that you're still updated, you're still in the game. And it's by being there and connecting with these companies. And that's what I've been doing with older people, older folks, after their midlife crisis in their 40s, and it's been doing wonders. Now with the younger folks, what have we been trying to focus? It's more often what we see is that they haven't found their why. So when they're job searching, it's so wide. So we're trying to, we use a tool called a decision maker, and we're really trying to focus on what are your must-have. But in these must-have, what are your non-negotiables and what are you ready to compromise? Once we know that, let's focus on the companies that you're interested in that matches that, and then focus your job hunt with those companies. It's, again, networking.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, networking, I would say, is the key tool to so many problems, because you're able to show off what you can do, and you're not being discriminated because on your resume you don't have enough experience, or on your resume it looks like you're too old.
Yeah. So this leads, I have one big question and one smaller question left, and then I think we have a lot of these topics we could talk again and again and again. So the first one, and it's a challenge I see from peers and people in the different industries. You help people in midlife crisis or looking to find their why or their purpose. You yourself have taken that change and path and discovered your why and have put some serious initiative into it. From your perspective as a woman and a leader, but also one who helps, I assume, some of your clients rediscover and negotiate for higher wages and find better careers, what have you seen, and what challenges so if we had a room full of people who are female leaders, growing executives, lots of potential, any advice, books, things that you would encourage them to do for them to, we had another speaker in to say, like, to own what you've already earned?
I would say, but it's not tangible, but just stop lowballing yourselves. It's crazy how, like, women, when I asked them in our first session, like, what is your goal salary? Well, right now I'm making 60K, but I would be willing to change for 40. Why? You're worth, do you think you're worth 60K? Yeah, well, that's what we're looking for. So stop lowballing yourself. Whatever you think you deserve, add 20K to that. yeah. So empower yourself, for women, I think when you're able to work on yourself and become a better version of yourself, which means personal growth, taking care of yourself, get in that growth mindset that I feel like guys maybe are doing more naturally, and then we'll be in the game. So
yeah, a really good friend of mine, she's paid a salary, and she's actually come home and said the words that I just don't know if I earned what I'm making. And I was like, I've never heard a boy said that ever, not once. And it's just been interesting to explore some of those differences and where they lie, and how do you, in like I have a few nieces, and I'm just like, how could I change my language today so that that's less of a thing in the future? I think it's going the right way. You tell me, but I think we're improving, but there seems to be a long way to go.
I feel like and maybe I should not say that out loud, but in my opinion, there's a lot of, and I don't want to start a fight here, but I think fighting males and females too often, and we're trying to empower female, but I would much prefer that we're putting everyone in the same room, and even guys will give their opinion on how can we help female get equal, not better than men. That's not the goal, but how can we get equal? But we need like all the genders at the same table. It's not by doing stuff female and empowering women in retreats, and yes, that's good, but we need everyone. If we want to change in our society, we need all genders at the table. And yeah, no, I think that men are willing to help us get where we want to go, but we have to let them. You guys are not the enemy.
I hope not. So the last question before we close this up for today is, you're a thinker, you're a speaker, you're an influencer. I'm wondering what influences and has educated you. What's shifted your perspectives? Are there icons or podcasts or books that you often recommend to anybody, either on the networking side, but also people who might want to open a business like you did?
Well, for Women Into the Wild with Brené Warren, all of her episodes are very insightful for any women that want to either become a better version of themselves or start a business. I would strongly recommend her podcast. I like podcast wise, I do, and there are a couple, so that's the ironic part. But Dan Martell, Velocity, I think. And he has another one, SaaS, some growth, or both podcasts. Dan is very like action oriented. It's straightforward. Every time that I listen to his podcast, I get something out of it. So those two podcasts, definitely. When it comes to book, I think that if you want to grow, if you want to become a better version of yourself and become a better professional, it all starts with your habits. So Atomic Habits by Clear is a must-have. Another one when it comes to habits is Miracle Morning. And if you want to start a business, everyone should read the E-Myth. So just by your laugh, I assume that you read it.
Oh, I've read it many times. It's actually recommended reading for our entire team on starting the job to get in the mindset of helping our entrepreneur clients.
Because a lot of people will get into business because they're the technician and they want to do their art, but there's more to it. And right now, my main focus, I feel like I'm good with when it comes to being the technician and the entrepreneur. The manager side, I need to be working on. So that really explained it well, and it's definitely a must read.
Those are great recommendations. Anything else that you wanted to add that I didn't bring the conversation to cover? Anything out there that you'd like to bring up? Last words?
Well, no, just a sales pitch. So if you know anyone who are not feeling fulfilled in their position, don't hesitate to reach out. We have our website. We're trying to give a lot of information on our different social media platform. But the more we can help people the better it is. So that's
Yeah.
the goal.
I think there's lots of people who need and want jobs. I think there's lots of jobs out there. I think the trouble or the challenge is finding the connection and the aligned purpose and why. So I love that there's a team of people working on that out there. So thank you very much. And I'll bring us down to the floor. If you have some time, I know my team would love to continue to ask some follow-up questions. But thank you very much, and we'll talk to you again soon.